Welcome to Scioto Ridge. My name's Jason. I'm privileged to serve here as senior pastor. It's good to be with you this morning as we continue on in our series, Give Thanks, where we're talking about this spiritual discipline, this inner disposition of our life of being a people of gratitude. And if you weren't here with us last week, I would encourage you to go back and watch last week's sermon, because we talked about what gratitude does to us and what gratitude does for us. And we specifically talked about how gratitude heals us. That literally gratitude heals our minds and heals our bodies. It heals our emotional kind of center, our soul, and it helps heal and sustain the relationships of our lives. And that we talked about that gratitude is more than a feeling, and it's more than just a response. Certainly gratitude does solicit a response, giving thanks. That could be literally saying thank you to somebody or receiving thanks from someone. But gratitude really is more a way of life. It's an inner part of who we are. And so today what I want to talk about is obstacles to gratitude. We hear things like from the Apostle Paul in 1 Thessalonians, give thanks in all circumstances. I mean, we hear that. If you've been raised in the church, you've probably heard that sentence, that phrase multiple times. We're told that we should give thanks, that we should be grateful, that we should count our blessings. Paul says in every circumstance. But if we're honest, gratitude doesn't always come naturally. We face obstacles. They may be subtle situations or powerful forces that can choke gratitude out of us. It's not always easy to be grateful. And so today I want to look at five kind of obstacles that kind of get in the way sometimes in our lives, that keep us from this kind of inner life of being grateful and thankful for what we have. And so we're going to look at comparison and busyness and entitlement and worry and toxic positivity. So let's look at comparison. Comparison's the thief of joy. You know, there's a Proverbs from the book of Proverbs 14:30, that says a tranquil mind, or one translation says a content heart gives life to the flesh, but jealousy or envy or comparison makes the bones rot. Let me say that again. Proverbs 14:30. A tranquil mind gives life to the flesh. A content heart gives life to the flesh, but jealousy makes the bones rot. Comparison says this: why don't I have what they have? And it's a thief of gratitude. It tells us what we have isn't quite enough because someone has more. They have more money, more success, more beauty, a bigger home, more space in their house, more blessings. And if we're honest, the stuff that we have is about our identity, isn't it? It communicates something to another person. What we have or what we don't have defines us. Just imagine if you pull in you're at a parking lot and you're getting ready to get out of your car, and in front of you, two cars are parked. A brand new Bentley with hand-stitched leather interior, and it is like blinding you how beautiful this car is. And parked right next to it is a 30-year-old Honda Civic. I don't know if Honda Civics are 30 years old, and it has more rust than it does paint, and the side mirror is barely hanging on, and you look at the tires, and if this thing goes one more mile, the tires are going to blow. And at the exact same time, the drivers get out. This guy gets out of the Bentley, this guy gets out of the Honda Civic, And I venture to, if you're anything like me, you would make a ton of assumptions about the lifestyle, life choices, experiences, success of the two drivers. Because what we have, or what we seemingly don't have, give off identity cues to other people, wrong or right. I'm not justifying that, but if you're like me, you would make all kinds of assumptions. The guy in the Bentley must be a CEO. He must be a famous doctor. Maybe he's an actor. This person has money, and maybe the person getting out of the Honda Civic, you assume what their home might look like. It might mirror what their Civic looks like. So we compare based off of what we see somebody has or what we see they don't have. And on top of that, you and I, we live in this crazy social media world. It doesn't matter. I'm finding it doesn't matter how old or young you are or how frequently you use social media or don't. We live in a world where we now have access to what we assume is going on in somebody's life. We look at pictures that are posted and we assume that they have the greatest vacations. And we look at their homes and the new remodels they've done, and we look at our home and we compare, or the fact that they purchased a brand new home, or their family looks perfect and my kids are picking their nose and fighting with each other. And we start to think that my ordinary life is lacking. Because comparison, it blinds us to what God has done in our story. And when we compare, we can't see life as grace because we focus on deficiency. And it leads to, as we talked briefly about last week, this kind of scarcity mindset. I don't have enough. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough success. I don't have enough cars. I don't have enough bedrooms and bathrooms. I don't have enough friends. I don't have enough popularity. And the list goes on and on and on. And we assume others have those things. Or even more dangerously, it can turn inward. I'm not enough. I'm not skinny enough. I'm not rich enough. I'm not healthy enough. I'm not enough. I'm not young enough. I'm not old enough. I'm not educated enough. I'm not enough. But somebody else is. And so I look to what they have or who I believe them to be, and I compare my deficiencies and what lacks in my life with what I assume they have. But gratitude is an act of stewardship. It doesn't look at what I don't have, but rather it embraces what I have. It embraces my age. It embraces my youth. It embraces the body I have. And it stewards it. And it asks, God, what do I do with what you have already given me? The close cousin of comparison is entitlement. Entitlement says, I deserve better. Turn in your scriptures to Numbers chapter 14, an Old Testament passage. It's on page 115 in the Pew Bible. Let me give you a little context to this passage as you turn into Numbers 14. So this is Israel has been delivered from captivity and slavery in Egypt, and they've been wandering around in the wilderness. And remember what God said to them. God says through Moses that God's going to deliver, or lead them into the promised land of Canaan. And this whole region would become their home. They were a people without a home, and now they were going to be given a place flowing with milk and honey. And so Moses, Joshua, others, they send some spies into the region to do an assessment of what they're going to face. And the spies come back to Israel and to the tribes, and they say, listen, it's pretty dangerous. There's a lot of other people over there. The Amalekites are there, and they have these fortified cities. And the people begin to panic, and they begin to grumble amongst themselves. So listen to what their response is in chapter 14. Then all the congregation raised a loud cry, and the people wept that night. And all the Israelites complained against Moses and Aaron. The whole congregation said to them, "Would that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would that we had died in this wilderness. Why is the Lord bringing us into this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our little ones will become booty. Would it not be better for us to go back to Egypt?" So they said to one another, "Let us choose a captain and go back to Egypt." Then Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before all the assembly of the congregation of the Israelites, and Joshua son of Nun and Caleb son of Jephunneh, who were among those who had spied out the land, tore their clothes and said to all the congregation of the Israelites, "The land we went through as spies is an exceedingly good land. If the Lord is pleased with us, he will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land that flows with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not fear the people of the land, for they are no more than bread for us. Their protection is removed from them, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear them." But the whole congregation threatened to stone them. The word of God for us, the people of God. Thanks be to God. So here, ancient Israel, they feel entitled to God's provisions and protections. They're facing armies and fortified cities, and these bad reports begin to circulate, and they believe that they're entitled to a life of ease. They felt entitled to this land flowing with milk and honey, but they didn't want to endure the hardships in order to get it. And so, almost like spoiled children, they cried out and said, "Let's go back home." They felt entitled. Entitlement, if we're honest, is a huge problem in suburbia. We love to believe that we don't live with entitlements. Entitlements are a part of our political discourse, aren't they? SNAP benefits, Medicaid, and other social agencies. Until we start tinkering with things like Social Security and Medicare. It's entitlements we all have. And so what entitlements whisper to us is that you earned this. You deserve this. And the more entitled we feel, the less grateful we become because we see blessings that are owed to us and not as gifts given to us. Gratitude says the opposite. Gratitude says all of life is a gift. Now, it doesn't deny hard work, but rather holding on to what I have or what I've accomplished with tight fists. I steward it, I care for it, I take the money that I have earned and I use it for the glory of God. I take the talents that have been honed over a lifetime and my experiences and I use them. I open my hands to use them because I see it all, every part of life, as a gift. Something then to be shared rather than to be hoarded. And then in suburbia, we run around like chickens with our heads cut off. Busyness creeps in, and we're too rushed to notice the gifts of God. We hear those beautiful psalms like Psalm 46, "Be still and know that I am God." And we say to ourselves, how can I be still when I have to run one kid to soccer practice and then get them to dance class, and then I got to drive through McDonald's to put food on the table. When I get home, there's already 5 piles of laundry in the laundry room. Somebody's got to do it. Be still? How can I be still when I have to make this meal for this ministry? Then I have to go volunteer at the hospital. Then I have to go to that community meeting. Then I have to babysit my grandchildren. Be still. How can I be still when I have project deadlines and papers to grade? Isn't stillness another word for laziness? So what busyness does is it numbs our awareness of God's goodness. When we fill every moment with meetings and errands and scrolling and all the notifications that we receive, our souls can't breathe. Have you ever held your breath for so long, like maybe as a kid you were testing like who can hold their breath underwater the longest? And because you don't like to lose, you took it a little too far. And all of a sudden your brain becomes depleted of oxygen and your vision begins to get blurry. And it's like you're going into a tunnel and it's getting darker and darker and darker. That's what busyness does to our soul. It chokes the breath of life. The world around us, with all its beauty and all of its goodness, becomes blurred and dark. So we don't have time for our friends. We don't have time to be present with our family. We don't have time to sit and watch a sunrise or a sunset. We don't have time to feel breath coming in and out of our lungs. We don't have time to enjoy the food we're eating. We just shove it in our mouth as we're driving to the next thing. We don't have time to see the craftsmanship of God around us. But gratitude invites us into what I call attentive presence. It slows us down enough that we begin to be attentive and present with the things around us. A meal doesn't just become something I gotta finish really quickly, but something to savor and enjoy. A conversation becomes grace to us. It's an attentive presence, being attentive to the life that is happening in front of me. The cousin of busyness is worry. The what if. We also hear Paul say things like in Philippians 4, don't be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your request to God. Well, Paul must have lived a pretty cushy life. Don't worry about anything. This is like the biblical version of what's Bob McFerrin's Don't Worry, Be Happy, you know, that Island Breezy song. Yeah, it makes sense, don't worry, be happy when you're sitting on a beach with a cocktail in your hand. But Paul doesn't understand my life and the stress I'm under and the fears that whether I'll have enough money to buy what I need, or whether I'll have enough to retire, or will my kids turn out okay. Paul didn't have any children. Or if my health will get better, or if this crazy world that we live in, if it's going to implode or not. Paul has no right to say, don't worry about anything. But what worry does is worry lives in the future. And some of us, because of the trauma we've experienced in our lives, we're always waiting on the other shoe to drop. And we believe that disappointment is inevitable. And so what we do to really protect ourselves from being vulnerable or admitting there's very little we actually have control over is we plan for the worst case scenarios, the what ifs. But what gratitude does, gratitude's this interesting thing because it lives both in the past and the present. In the past, we looked at this last week, it calls us to remember. Remember what I said last week, how the Bible itself is a book of remembering. Gratitude invites us to remember God's goodness. When we remember the things that we feared the most, probably didn't fully come to fruition like we thought they would. It helps us remember the friends and families that did care for us during difficult times. And it helps us remember that we were stronger than what we thought we were going to be. And it helps us remember the moments and times that we experienced the presence of God in the past. And yet it's also a present reality. Again, this attentive presence. When our minds and our bodies begin to slow down, we can open our eyes and become aware of goodness and beauty and life-giving relationships and even giving thanks for ourselves now, in the present moment, even as we endure hardships. Corrie ten Boom, who is was a Holocaust survivor, she later became a Christian and a preacher and speaker. She once said, "Worry doesn't empty tomorrow of its sorrow. It empties today of its strength." Let me say that again. Worry doesn't empty tomorrow of its sorrow. It empties today of its strength. Worry always will imagine scarcity. But gratitude remembers and names and anticipates God's sufficiency. It recenters us in the truth that God is with us right now. And God will be faithful to us tomorrow. And the last obstacle I think gets in the way of gratitude is toxic positivity, which is fake gratitude. We hear Paul say in Romans 12, "Rejoice with those who rejoice and mourn with those who mourn." Both go together. You know, there's this movement we were talking about in worship planning this week, this kind of movement of manifesting gratitude. If I, kind of put out into the universe something positive, then it's going to return back to me. It's really the equivalent of Christian karma. What goes around comes around. And if I do good, positive things and think all positive thoughts, then my life is going to turn out positively great. But what that does is it denies the human experience of loss. Toxic positivity says things like, well, just be thankful. Or God won't give you more than you can handle. Or if God closes one door, then another one will open. Or just think about all the new things you'll be able to do now that you've been fired from your job. Or, well, it could always get worse. Or there's always a silver lining, you just got to find it. Or just focus on the positive. So what toxic positivity does is it confuses gratitude with denial. Real gratitude doesn't ignore pain. Gratitude can hold both joy and sorrow at the same time because it doesn't see them as opposites or conflicting emotions, but rather as the full experience of life itself. And so toxic positivity, this denial of pain, it invalidates our experiences. Life is hard. Relationships change. Loved ones die. We lose jobs. We go through financial hardships. We get sick. And so what it does is it denies those human emotions for some fabricated gratitude or fake gratitude, which ultimately what it does is it really leads to suppression. We suppress the real things we're feeling, which we know that leads to devastating impacts on our minds and on our emotional center, our bodies, and in our relationships, the very thing that authentic gratitude seeks to heal. When we deny the reality of the situation we're in and the pain and the loss and the feelings we might have. So Paul holds both. I gave Paul a bad rap in a couple other passages. But he holds both. Rejoice with those who rejoice and mourn with those who mourn. Grief and joy are inseparable. Gratitude helps me see the things or the people or the situations that I once had for what it was, a gift. And when those things are gone, for whatever reason, pain and sorrow and grief are the natural response to what I've lost. And when I grieve what I've lost, it reveals how meaningful that gift was in the first place. And here's the interesting thing. When I allow myself to grieve that loss, it actually leads to deeper gratitude, which in turn is a part of the healing process. When we no longer have the thing or the person or the situation we once did, we begin to hold the memories and experiences as precious. And these memories begin to feel over time like joy and appreciation. Toxic positivity denies us the gift of remembering and giving thanks. It denies us the ability to be honest, to rejoice, and to mourn. So if you find yourselves in a season of not feeling overly grateful, ask yourself, is comparison or entitlement or busyness or worry or toxic positivity denying your own loss? Are they blinding you to the beauty and goodness of God all around you? So last week I encouraged you to do an activity. I hope you did it. There's no grade. This week I'm going to invite you to do another activity. So I want to invite you to grab your little insert. This is an opportunity for you to see grace, to see goodness, to see beauty in the ordinariness of your life, in the mundaneness of your own life. So I would encourage you to find about 10 to 15 minutes. I know time is precious and we think we're all too busy, we don't have enough time. But settle and just breathe. Taking in a few deep breaths. Praying, Lord, open my eyes, and as you exhale, thank you for your presence. Just let your body and your soul become still. And then I invite you to just begin to name some ordinary gifts. Things that maybe you're grateful for in that day. Simple things like a warm cup of coffee, or laughter with a friend, or that quiet 5 minutes you had in your car before the crazy kids jumped in the back of the van. And just name it. This is a gift. And then the hard part is to even begin to express gratitude for hard things. The difficult things you're in, the loss that you're experiencing, and to begin to ask, where might God actually be at work in the midst of those hard things? Are there small little graces that you've seen or lessons you might learn to give thanks to God in that situation? And then turn outward and give thanks to God for people who are a part of your life. Specifically name them. Send them a note, a text, a call, face-to-face expression of gratitude. And then just end your time in 10-15 minutes with worship. Just a moment of stillness, a moment of praise. Asking God to continue to keep your eyes wide open to see God's goodness and beauty and mercy in your life. Will you pray with me? God, you are good. Help us this coming week to see your goodness all around us in small little things like a hot cup of coffee, to conversations, to big things like our jobs, our homes, our family and friends. God, protect us from comparing, from being envious of what others have. Forgive us when we have felt entitled. God, help us slow down. God, the places we worry, remind us of your presence with us today and your presence in our stories in the past. And God, help us name the things we're actually feeling and to just be honest about where we are in life. And in doing that, may we experience you in a new and profound way. In Jesus' name. And all God's people said, amen.